This meeting is being cablecast by Area 58 Community Access Media, Channel 15, and will be posted by Area 58 on YouTube as soon as possible. There are openings on several committees. Please refer to the front page on our website for a listing and application. If we could all stand for the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Hoffman, if you wouldn't mind reading our community prayer.
Sure. Almighty God, humbly we pray your blessing as we concern our life with the opportunity to serve our community. Enhance us with your spirit of dignity and selflessness. May we become instruments of support and understanding as we seek to bring an environment of trust and purpose among all who provide the many services that makes us all that we can become. Help us achieve the goals of our commitment in this office that is now our responsibility. And especially, we lift our prayers for all the citizens of our community that we have been allowed to serve, that they may discover the fullness and joy of life that we all seek. And keep those serving in our armed forces and our first responders in our hearts and thoughts. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. The first item on our agenda this evening, as always, is citizens' participation. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? I don't see any, so we will move on. So we have a number of town meeting items to discuss tonight. The first item is Article number 25, the Mullen Rule. Mr. Fennessy, was Mr. Bott going to be here for that?
Oh. Well, we skip that.
All right.
He's here, so.
And he's here for 26 scenic roads as well, right?
Yes.
Correct? All right, so the next one would be Article 8, the Community Preservation Committee. Mr. Bentley, thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for inviting me.
Speaking to the mic.
So the Community Preservation Committee held our meetings, we had a public meeting in January to discuss projects that were proposed to us. And we voted on all of them. We got a fair number of projects this year, which is great. We're excited to have the breadth of the projects that are before us. So I'll go down through the list of projects. We've basically got 5. It's listed as parts A through E. Part A is really boilerplate. It's the sort of, it basically is required by the Community Preservation Act to put 10% of the funds into historic preservation, 10% into open space and recreation, and 10% into affordable housing. And that's what this is doing. It's also taking care of the track and field bond that we had. We're on year 4 of our bond payments. So it's $329,150 for the bond payment for the track and field. We know that that's coming up on a recurring basis, so we're keeping track of that. So that's pretty much straightforward there. Part B is from the Union Society. It's for $20,000 to reconstruct one spire and one spire only. Last year, the town meeting voted to approve monies to reclad all of the spires, all 6 spires. And in the process of doing the 6 spires, the contractor, Ben Phippen, who is a local Carver resident, found that one of the spires was deteriorated badly enough that it needed to be totally reconstructed. And he estimated that at that time it was going to be $20,000, and so we're looking at giving the $20,000 to take care of that. That should take. He said all the other 5 spires were fine. He actually put cladding on the outside of the spire that's in poor shape, but he set it up so that he could take it off easily and do the work that needed to be done. So the committee recognized the importance there of having that done. We've and back in 2007 we actually paid to redo the shutters of the Union Society building. And I note that was an addition to Part B, which says that the select board's authorized to gain a historic restriction. We already have that historic restriction in place. It won't be replaced but does not need to be replaced at all. It's in place. It's been in place since 2007, and it's strictly for the exterior of the building, which is the way things have to work, because if you start doing work on the interior of the building, then they have to be opening the building to the public at certain intervals. So they're happy with maintaining the exterior of the building. Part C is to see if the town will vote to appropriate $325 from community preservation unrestricted funds, basically to demolish the old tennis court behind the Marcus Atwood house, which is in a sorry state of disrepair to start with, and replace that with a pickleball court. I believe it's 6 pickleball courts. It was brought to us by the Recreation Committee, and their emphatic statement was, we spent a huge amount of money on recreation for all of the kids in Carver, and they're happy to have done that, but they feel like a pickleball court will actually maybe address some of the needs for seniors. This is a very up-and-coming sport that people are, and particularly seniors, are enjoying doing, although I did hear some demographics that said it's moving its way down in age too. So, but the rec committee has basically expressed an interest in having this done. They are willing to do the yeoman's work in terms of scheduling, making sure that schedules are met, make sure that it's not, because it's so popular throughout the area, make sure that it's not just out-of-towners that will be able to use the pickleball courts, that we will actually have space available for, or the rec committee will make sure that there's space available for Carver residents. We felt like that this is a good use of funds. We started off a good bit higher than this in terms of amount of money requested, and we were able to get them to come down significantly in terms of the amount of money. We believe that this is going to be adequate for doing the whole thing from soup to nuts. I would like to note that any funds not expended come directly back to the Community Preservation Committee unrestricted funds, so that these are not outright grants. They are grants that we actually go through every single bill and make sure that every single bill is appropriately earmarked and appropriately taken care of, and if there's excess monies, they come back to the committee.
Mr. Bentley, can I just ask you on Part C, the pickleball, is part of this plan, is there any plan for additional parking down there for the people that may want to play pickleball?
There isn't, although Mary Ross was pretty confident that that they would be able to open up a few more spaces adjacent to the pickleball courts.
Okay.
I recognize that could be a problem.
Okay, yeah, because the only issue I would mention that in the planning is that there aren't that many spaces right now for the folks that use the Council on Aging. So I think it's important that those spaces stay available for the Council on Aging on those days when it's open. And
we, as a committee, assign a member of the committee to oversee the project as it's ongoing.
Great.
And so we'll make sure that person that's overseeing it will be pushing for that.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So was there something else?
Can I just say one thing on that?
Sure.
So on the pickleballs, I talked to Dave Siedentoff, and he said they'll do what they can to do some work down there where it'll actually save some money from that may have be used to give back to the CPC. So by pulling out the old tar and whatever, fencing and all that stuff.
Great,
So
thank you.
We-
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Bentley.
We had heard that, and we're very appreciative of that. Part D is to see if the town will appropriate $39,000 for the community from community preservation unrestricted funds for the purpose of constructing 2 Adirondack-style shelters on the Cole property. This was brought to us by, I believe, it was brought to us by the Carver Trail and Conservation Stewards and the Conservation Commission. Basically, it's to build 2, and the Adirondack shelters, in case you don't know, are 3-sided structures with the largest opening facing out, and they're going to be built with very large timber. It's going to be logs, and the price seems a little bit high, but Dan Badger, who put all of this together, seems to have come up with as good a price as he can. Prices for some building materials have actually dropped a little bit, so we will take advantage of any drop in price that we can. This is for 2 of them. This will be maintained by a sign-in, sign-out basis by the Conservation Commission. It's set up so that it will take care of, hopefully, utilize some of the Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. Will be utilizing it, Girl Scouts also, and then it will be available to the public on a first-come, first-served basis. It's purposely, it's set in the old sand borrow area that was used for the bogs, the 3 acres of bogs that are on the Cole property, and that's adjacent. So it's adjacent to the bogs themselves. It's right on the Blue Trail and I believe the Orange Trail, so it's pretty accessible, and we think will be another good addition to the Cole property.
Okay.
Part E is to see if the town will vote to appropriate $82,500 from the Community Preservation Unrestricted Funds for the purpose of establishing an Avenues of Honor program for the town. This article will also establish a stewardship committee so that the stewardship committee will actually be formed and will start selecting the initial individuals for honor. Right now, the plan is for there to be flags all down Main Street. However, we know that there's significantly more veterans and service members than we can probably populate on Main Street, so we may have to go on to other avenues also. That has been taken into account. The $82,500. Again, Dan Badger is really spearheading a lot of this, but he believes that we'll be able to buy a huge number of flags, and this is for any member of anybody who's served in Carver, and they can either have their faces on the flag, and it'll be both sides, or they can just have their service designation, if they prefer, with their names. He believes that the $82,500 will be adequate for buying the majority of the flags. We've also had some strong interest from outsiders who are interested in basically making donations, and so we think that can be put to good use. I'm expecting that the stewardship committee that's being set up here will be able to have a fund put aside for that, but we're not there yet. The stewardship committee will also be in charge of maintaining the storage of the flags as well as any hardware. Basically, the hardware is pretty standard, and it is just big enough to hold the flag, and we think it should be pretty nice and should be pretty good honor for all of the veterans.
When will the flags be hung?
Right now, we're talking about from Memorial Day, I believe it is, through Columbus Day. I believe was the overall thought. It may be a little bit longer than that, but I'm not positive. But for a good period of time.
I think it was the Veterans Day. in
Okay,
November.
that would make more sense.
Do you know, do we need to get permission from the utility company to hang these flags?
My understanding is that there is going to be a need, and that Dan has been looking into that, along with Carver Cultural Council, to make sure that that's going to be okay.
Okay.
Does the stewardship committee have like a format that's gonna be an official town committee? So what will the membership makeup be?
That was asked, and it was Dan who was thinking this whole thing through. Basically, said he didn't really want to put down the exact makeup of the committee at this point. He thought that maybe he had some thoughts. He said he didn't necessarily want to even be on the committee, but he would be more than willing to work with them.
Well, I guess Mr. Bentley, or perhaps through you to Mr. Fennessy, who would be in charge of appointing this stewardship committee?
We'll probably default to the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Select Board.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Bentley, thank you.
And Part F, the final article, is to see if the town will appropriate $50,000 for the community preservation, from the community preservation unrestricted funds for the purpose of constructing an outdoor classroom at 44 Lakeview Street. It's basically intended to be outdoor. It will not have a cement base, since the conservation restriction that exists on that property says you cannot have a cement base. So it will be some other, probably wood chips or something like that as a base. But it will be large enough to hold, little day sessions. That proposal came in from the Conservation Commission. It's also looking to put in a small dock on that property. There has been some discussion about possibly having kayaks for rent, but I think that's going way before, putting the cart way before the horse. But if we can have a dock so that people can actually take their kayaks down and put their own kayaks in right off the dock, that would be a good thing. The proposal actually has fencing adjacent, basically between it and the new house that's been built on, adjacent to 44 Lakeview. It was said, it was stated that, why don't we put up some sort of a nice big fence that, basically blocks out everything, and the Conservation Commission felt like it was much more important to have a split rail fence, so that animals could get across, and and it would basically encourage the wildlife to be able to transit back and forth.
Okay.
So this 44, that's the property that the town purchased a few years ago,
Yes,
right next to the COA?
right.
Okay, thanks.
And I believe there's planned to be a cut through from the parking lot.
And aren't they planning on taking down there's an old iron fence between the COA and 44 Lakeview as well? I think,
So I would say we have Mr. Moore here from the Conservation Commission. Perhaps you might have some insight into some of these questions, if you're willing to speak to them?
I'm willing to speak to that.
If you just step up to join Mr. Bentley at the table for a moment.
Savory Moore, 12 South Main Street, Chairman of the Carver Conservation Commission. There is a fence that is between the properties, between the COA and the beach and the 44 Lakeview property. It is our intent at some point to take that down. I believe that there is something in the deed. There's a deed restriction that states that a fence must remain there, so that's something that has to be removed from the deed before. We just can't go in and take it down.
Okay.
So, but that's something that we can take care of fairly easily. We're kind of looking at a master plan, and a lot is going to depend upon the the votes at town meeting of not only the article that Mr. Bentley's talking about now regarding the pavilion, the fence, and the dock, but also the pickleball courts, because that's going to have an impact on what happens to the rest of that property. So we're waiting to see what annual town meeting does before we start formulating more concrete plans to how this is going to work. And just one thing I do want to add on the fence between the properties, between 40 and 44 Lakeview. The proposal for conservation is a split rail fence with bird houses, different types of bird houses on top of every other post to attract different birds to the area. And part of the rules of the conservation land that is there is that we have to pretty much let it go natural. We can probably mow it once a year, early in the year, but then it has to grow. Other than trails that we can create and maintain, but we have to pretty much let it go naturally. So that's basically where it stands. If I may answer one other question that was asked earlier by the chairman, Mr. Townsend, regarding parking. About 4 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, a preliminary plan was done with Fuss and O'Neill about what could be done there, and that's where the original price came in for the pickleball courts, which was extremely high. But that included paving and making parking lots there. And it created about an additional 30 or so parking spaces. Now, in Mary Ross's charge to lower the cost, the parking lot went away. But the space that those cars could go in is still there. So it can still be parking without paving. So I think that would address a lot of the concerns, and
I think it would, and I'm glad you brought that up.
yeah. So the space is there. It's just that the money to make it a true full paved parking lot was a little bit over the top for what the recreation department is trying to do here.
Okay, great,
So,
thank you. That's
All
good
right.
for me.
Anything else?
No, I don't think so. Why don't we
Okay.
take a vote?
Thank you.
To put this on the warrant, and then we can talk about the individual parts. Is there a motion to place Article 8 in its entirety on the warrant?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on placing it on the warrant? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Is there a motion to recommend Part A?
I recommend Part A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on Part A? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Is there a motion to recommend Part B?
I recommend Article 8, Part B.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion. Any further discussion on Part B? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. And Mr. Bentley, I'm sorry, I apologize. Were all these Part A through E, were they all recommended by the
Through F.
CPC?
Yes, the vote for Part A and B was 8-0. For Part C was 7-1. For Part D, E, and F, they were 7-0-1.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're on Part C. Is there a motion to recommend Part C?
I move that we recommend Part C.
Second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on Part C?
Go for it.
After
Nope.
you. Nope. No,
Do you know if a sound study has been done? Because I've seen several stories on the news lately, but the sound from the pickleball courts is actually kind of more abrasive than people thought, and I believe it's Wellesley is actually being sued about it. That the sound penetrates and is more high pitched, and towns are saying there's multiple towns having issues with them. So has a sound study been done?
A sound study has not been done, but that was brought up and discussed with the Recreation Committee and Mary Ross in particular. And everyone who was thinking about the location at Marcus Atwood were feeling like there's not going to be a lot of abutting neighbors that we have to worry about. That tends to be a pretty non-heavily housed area. You know, if it was going to be if it was going to be on Forest Street, that would be one thing. But if it's, you know, down at the Marcus Atwood House, I think we all feel like it's going to be a not as big a problem.
Mark. So are there lights for evening use? Oh, Savory's shaking his head no.
I don't believe there are.
Okay, so that that modifies it somewhat.
Yeah.
You know, it's during the day, so.
Mr. Cotter?
I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, at a few meetings, I thought we were talking about that whole area as to do some kind of big, almost like.
Mr. Cotter, if you could just speak, make sure you speak into the microphone.
Bridges in the way. And I thought at prior meetings, there were discussions about a complete master plan for that area. And number one, is there one? Does this fall into it? Or are we kind of doing this piecemeal?
If I could, I thought that Mr. Moore said that that's what the Conservation Commission is working on with the Rec Committee and presumably Council on Aging. I mean, I remember going on some site walks several years ago, and all representatives from those three groups were all there. So I think you said it was sort of an ongoing.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for it, Mr. Fennessy, didn't you mention to me that there are plans for a site plan for that area
Yeah, there
as
is.
well?
Mhm.
Yeah, there is, to look at all the pieces together and see how it'll affect one to another.
What I had said earlier is that we were waiting for an outcome of annual town meeting on the pickleball. There's not a lot that can be done with the 44 Lakeview property. The restrictions on that, because it's conservation property, are quite strict and unmovable. So it's basically the master plan for that area would incorporate the conservation land as far as being accessible, but it would not be able to be used to increase, let's say, parking or the beach area or the access to the beach area. That 44 Lakeview property needs to remain almost in its natural state, other than minor things such as making it more usable for the public, such as walking trails, gardens, things like that. But a master plan would be a good thing to have, but it probably wouldn't affect what happens to the 44 Lakeview Street. So the pickleball can kind of be looked at as its own entity for that piece of property. I think that there's a way to combine both of them a little bit more user-friendly if in fact the pickleball is approved. But as far as a master plan, there's not much that can happen with the 44 Lakeview Street that's not going to happen already.
Got it.
Okay?
Yeah. Mr. Moore, if I could just, while you're there.
Yes.
As far as the conservation restrictions that are in place on the conservation property, do those restrictions prohibit parking for activities on the conservation property? For instance, if we put in a boat dock or something like that for people to launch canoes, can it be a couple of parking spaces over there for people to park while they're launching their canoes, or?
We can be judicious in allowing parking, because obviously if we're having walking trails, people have to be able to park there, but we can't take a third of it and pave it over. We can add some parking. And actually the thought of the Conservation Commission, because that's sort of a little bit of a dangerous area there, that whole intersection, was that if we do have any parking there, which we probably will, that it would be after the fence was taken down, and the access to the parking would be through the Council on Aging driveway, the beach driveway, not off of Lakeview Street.
All right,
That's
thank
our
you.
original plan, but that can change.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any other questions from the board on Part C? All right, hearing none. All in favor of Part C?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
Is it 4-1? Okay. Thank you. All right, Part D. Is there a motion to approve Part D?
I move that we approve Part D.
Second it?
We have a motion and a second to approve Part D. Discussion? Mr. Carter?
Yeah, this is for the Cole property. Is there, it just seems awful lot of money for two Adirondack-style shelters. So can you tell me number one, is this part of a, I don't want to call it a master plan, but is there a plan for the coal property that is to do X number of things, and this is the first stage?
I can answer that. There's a land use and management plan for the coal property that was written in 2007. And this is a use that is allowed and suggested in there, as well as the trails, signage. So a lot of recommendations in that plan.
So what exactly will be done under the Adirondack style shelters? What are they used for?
For for the scouts to camp, to spend the night.
Okay, could I get an answer from?
Please.
Sorry.
Sure, we're looking for it to be for Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts.
Like bird watching? I'm kind of trying to get the activities. I don't know. I'm not big into conservation. I'm just trying to learn what.
For, you said for bird watching, basically it's for scoutcraft. It's, so that the kids can learn how to, how to survive out in the wilds. It's not, again, it's not just for scouting, it's also for general public. If people want to come in, it's adjacent to the abandoned cranberry bogs. There's definitely wildlife around to see. I know of some illegal deer blinds that are out there, and so there are deer out there. So there's a good number of trails. As you might recall, we spent money to do a suspension bridge on on the Orange Trail. And that's really a showpiece as far as trails. It basically goes over a large wet area, but we purposely had it made so that it would not accommodate off-road vehicles. So we're trying. I think what's happening with the coal properties, we're trying to integrate it and make it more and more user-friendly, so that more people will go out and use the coal property overall. It's a beautiful piece of property and has a widely varied types of trails, so you can actually have harder trails and easier trails to hike on. So I think it's a good use. I expect that we're going to see a fair amount of use of the shelters.
And do the shelters have, like, I don't know, benches for people to sit down and do things, or tables, or they just outdoor shelters? You said one side's open, so.
Right. So I'm not sure exactly whether they have benches or not. I'm sure there will. Well, there's going to be a fire pit.
Okay.
And so there's going to be benches around the fire pit, and fire pit will be built to Chief Weston's specifications, so that it will be used, both day and night.
Got it. Thank you.
Anything else on Part D? All right. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Is there a motion to recommend Part E?
I move that we recommend Part E.
I'll second that.
Well, we have a motion and a second to recommend Part E. Discussion?
I think just preemptive to my vote, I'm pro-veteran. I come from a military family. I have concerns about the setup of the committee and how it's going to be controlled, but I don't want this to come across as against veterans at all.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. Sorry.
Mr. Cotter.
Can you walk me through this a little bit from a standpoint of it gets blessed and we're ready to move? We're going to have how many flags do we have to buy?
Several
Ballpark?
hundred,
Okay.
at least.
What size are these flags?
The
Do you know, Mr. Bentley, are they planned to be similar to the veterans flags we've seen in other towns? I think Plymouth has them. I know Taunton has them.
I actually have a picture.
Oh, okay.
Wow. So if someone wants to, have a family member put out there, is that a free cost to the resident, and they just send you a photo and the information on their loved one that gets put out there?
Yes.
Do you know if there's an,
Right now, we already have, Carver Cultural Council already has a list of 1,500 veterans. So it's a large number already. And, you know, I think it's, you know, and basically anybody who wants to have their, if any family member wants to have their loved one honored, and they haven't been found in terms of the initial search, you know, all they have to be able to do is provide some proof and they'll be added. Now, one of the problems with 1,500 is that there's 500 electric poles in Carver. So that could create some issues, but it may take some rotation, but the Community Preservation Committee did not get into that.
and I'm just trying to get the process down. So you're gonna do the flag. I have a family member. I submitted to the Veterans Agency
You'll
or to
submit it to the Stewardship Committee.
the Stewardship Committee. And then there's cost of printing and putting this information on the flag. Is that included in the
Yes,
82,500?
yes.
Okay. And who hangs these flags? Is this something that, is that town employees and outside
It's my
service?
understanding that the town DPW has agreed that this is a worthy effort and that they would be willing to assist.
Okay. And my last question was, do you have to, say you had a famous Civil War person that you wanted to put up there, do you have to get releases from their family at all? Or can you just, someone's famous that served in the Civil War, can you just put it up if you have a space?
My understanding is that every veteran or their family is going to be contacted prior to putting up any of the flags, so that they will have, not necessarily, well, they'll have to acknowledge that they've been contacted and have agreed to having a flag put up.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. Anything else on Part E? All right, hearing none. Is there a motion to recommend Part E? Oh, we already had the motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
4-1, thank you. And finally, is there a motion to recommend Part F?
I move that we recommend Part F.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to recommend Part F. A discussion?
Quick, kind of piggybacking off of John, the article mentions, Troop 48, Pack 63 of the Scouts. Will this be open to the general public too?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah.
Mr. Gott?
Good question. It's identified as an outdoor classroom. Is that something that the school department's weighed in on at all?
It's more like a pavilion, similar to what's across the street in the park, the band shell. It's just an open-air pavilion that can be used for education, conservation, education.
Okay.
Everybody good?
Yeah.
All right. All right. All in favor of Part F?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bentley.
Mr. Chairman, just so the committee or the select board knows, I'm intending to present this at town meeting as we have in the recent past, as one article, basically try to get town meeting to vote on all parts A through F. If there's any discussion that they'd like it broken out, we will go to parts A through F individually.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming tonight and appreciate all your hard work.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Then we'll go back to the top of our agenda, Article 25, the Mullen Rule. Mr. Bott. thank you for stopping by tonight. And I know you're a little pressed for time. I think you have a meeting at 7, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm Tom Bott, I'm the town planner here, and if I stayed in the room the first time, I wouldn't be pressed at all. So thank you for acknowledging I have a meeting, but we're in fine shape.
Okay.
I've
great,
got
thank you.
Don in the back, he's going to run interference for me, just in case they start without me. So yes, I wanted to bring to the board's attention the Mullen Rule. So under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 3923D, informally known as the Mullen Rule, allows any member of an adjudicating board to miss one meeting for an application, and as long as they review the record, and that does not include the minutes, but the record, transcription, the video of a meeting, they are still eligible to participate in that particular hearing. So you've got, the ZBA has a permit for, a shed. It takes several meetings. Someone misses one meeting. As long as they review the tape, they are allowed to certify to the town clerk that they've reviewed the record, and they can vote on that. And what it does is it creates some continuity for those members on the board, and also sort of shrinks the timeline for permitting. If you have a situation where you don't have everyone there and no one can sit in on a future meeting, then they essentially have to continue that hearing with no testimony, and it just drags the process out. It is widely used in most of the towns in Massachusetts. It came to the to a town meeting here a few years back, and wasn't approved. It was a part of another town meeting article as well that had some funding for permits. My research shows that when the funding for permits in Part A of that article wasn't passed, there wasn't any vote on Part B. So the Mullen Rule is something that is appropriate for every adjudicating board in the town.
Okay. I noticed this came from the planning board. Do you know if the planning board took a vote on this?
The planning board did take a vote on this. So I had suggested this to the planning board essentially when I first got here. Okay. So the planning board did take a vote on it, and the planning board's vote was 0-3-0.
Okay. And do you know, does this rule in the town of Carver, and through you to Mr. Fennessy, does it affect other boards in town besides the planning board?
Yes. Conservation, ZBA, planning board, any adjudicating board, anybody who reads, takes testimony, and makes a decision about something.
Okay. And the individual boards don't adopt the Mullen Rule, the town adopts.
The town adopts the Mullen Rule.
Correct. Okay.
So we, with that vote, we will create a form that essentially says, I state your name, read the record, sign that, certify they familiar with the record, and file that with the town clerk, and it's part of the decision record.
Okay. Great.
What about boards and committees that don't record the meeting or have a transcript? Because you said you can't just review minutes.
Then they would not be able to use the Mullen Rule.
Okay. Is there a motion to put Article 25 on the ballot, on the warrant?
I move that we put Article 25 on the warrant.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of placing Article 25 on the warrant?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, 4-1. We normally don't vote to recommend or not recommend planning board articles. Does anyone feel that they, for some reason, want to vary on
Yeah,
this?
I'd like to recommend it because it applies to more than just the planning board.
Well, that was the reason I asked, because it does affect a number of boards in town. Okay, would you like to make a motion to recommend?
Yeah, I move that we recommend Article 25.
All right. Is there a second?
Okay.
All right. Well, Article 25 is on the warrant. Article 26, the scenic roads.
So Article 26 regards scenic roads. It is part of Massachusetts General Chapter 40, Section 15C, and it relates only to the roads that are on the list, and relates only to street trees and stone walls within the public right-of-way. So if the tree warden wants to cut down a tree that's in the road right-of-way, he posts a hearing and he cuts down a tree. If there's a tree in the right-of-way that needs to be cut down and it's on a scenic road, that hearing goes to the planning board. So it affects those particular roads, and in this case, there are 17 roads on the list. I won't read them all because they're on the warrant. One of the things that was also, I think, an interest in this from some other boards in my conversations with the Historic Commission, was that, having X miles of scenic road, having X number of scenic roads was also a potential tourist draw. People go, oh, there's these scenic roads in Carver. We should go see them. Maybe we'll ride our bicycles or just take a Sunday drive. But they are specifically designated for that very narrow function of stone walls and trees within the road right-of-way. It is in the 2010 open space plan. That's where I discovered it. It was one of those things that was suggested to be created at that point, and apparently never was. So we're bringing it back in the map that is in your information is from the 2010 open space plan, which I believe we're in the process of updating.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Other questions from the board on Article 26?
What happens if someone does it without getting permission? Because there should be consequences.
I do not know the answer to that question.
Okay.
I have one question. So this, just to ease the residents' potential fears who live on these roads, this does not affect their property. This is only town-owned property within the town, the road easement.
Correct. And the thing that I explain to folks on a fairly regular basis is there's the right-of-way that the road is in. So you see a road and you see 26 feet of pavement. So the right-of-way is typically 50 feet. So there's 14 feet of road right-of-way, usually 7 or so feet on each side, and in that 7 feet goes water hydrants, telephone poles, underground utilities, and things like that. So you see the road and the right-of-way is typically 7 to 10 feet beyond that. So those folks who are mowing their front lawn, who are actually mowing the town's right-of-way, we appreciate that, keep doing it. But where a tree is at, it may look like it's on your property, it may be in the road right-of-way. That's why the highway, the operations and maintenance post a hearing to make sure that they know where that tree's located, if it's on private property or within the road right-of-way.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I see also that this came from the planning board. Do you know if was there a vote by the planning board on this?
Yes, the planning board voted 4-0-0 on this.
All right, thank you. Is there a motion to place Article 26 on
The
the
warrant says 3-0 for the planning board vote.
Yeah, that might have been the second night. So first night we had 4 members of the planning board. Second night, I guess when this came up, it was 3 members. So
Okay.
3-0-0. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't scroll down that
No.
far on my computer. Is there a motion to place Article 26 on the
I
warrant?
move that we place Article 26 on the warrant.
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bott.
Thank you very much.
think there's anything else here on our warrant tonight that you would be here to speak to. Mr. Fennessy, do you see anything?
The zoning, down the bottom, 27 to 34, what's that?
27 to 34, yeah, let's
Those are.
quickly, if you have a minute, Mr. Bott, let's quickly look at those. I mean, these would basically just be put on the warrant because we don't normally vote on the zoning articles. So 27. 27 is a very long one.
That is likely the, because I don't have the warrant in front of me, that is likely the revised solar bylaw?
27 is
Okay.
the amendment to solar bylaw 3580.
Correct. So that hearing has been closed and recommended by the planning board. They are basically looking at the work that the Solar and Better Energy Storage Moratorium Committee did and put together the information. So that is on the warrant, recommended for favorable action 4-0-0 by the planning board.
All right. Is there a motion to place Article 27 on the warrant?
I move we place Article 27 on the warrant.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of placing Article 27 on the warrant?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Article 28. Give me a minute to get there.
That is likely the new section 3590 battery energy storage bylaw.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Okay. I'm still trying to get to the very,
It's on page 33.
I must have skipped right by it. All right, yeah, that is Article 28, the new bylaw 3590, battery energy storage system zoning bylaw from the Solar Battery Storage Moratorium Committee.
Yes, so once again, this is a product that came out of the Battery Energy Storage Committee. We weighed heavily into Medway's bylaw. The town of Medway has spent an inordinate amount of money studying this issue. Their staff is incredible. In fact, I was at the CPTC conference this weekend to hear Barbara San Andre, who's an attorney and their planning director. So the town of Medway has spent a lot of time and money looking at this. So we borrowed very heavily from their bylaw, amended it to meet the needs of the town of Carver. And after the hearing was closed, because they'd saved me and the town so much money, I sent them in one of those edible fruit arrangements with chocolate on it to thank their staff for all the work that they did to put this together.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to place Article 28 on the warrant?
I move that we place Article 28 on the warrant.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Article 29 is the motion, the warrant, the article to amend the use table for battery storage.
Yes, so currently on the use table, there is one line for battery storage. It just says battery storage, and it says, yes, it's allowed, and yes, it's also allowed by special permit. It's very confusing. So we're replacing that line with 3 new lines because we have tiered battery storage into tiers 1, 2, and 3. So that is an amendment to change the use table to recommend, to note the where those different tiers of battery storage are permitted.
All right, is there a motion to place Article 29 on the warrant?
I move that we place Article 29 on the warrant.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Article 30 is the article to amend the zoning map to correct previous zoning changes not reflected in the current 2015 zoning map.
Yes, so our Article 30 started with a resident whose property was, the zoning was changed on it because of a map error. We changed mapping vendors, and the map was changed, but with no vote at town meeting. And so that sort of started our investigation. Well, if we have this one parcel that's in error, how many other are out there? So we started going through with staff. Jen Muller did a great job at identifying all the zoning bylaw changes, all the map changes from 2004 on, the last time I had some confidence in the map. So we've identified a number of parcels that have been zoned by town meeting, but the map hasn't been changed to reflect them. And the way you change a map is you go to town meeting to change the map. So we're not changing the zoning on any of these properties. We're just changing the map to reflect the zoning that is in place for these. And there are about 10, I believe.
Great, thank you. Is there a motion to place Article 30 on the warrant?
I move that we place Article 30 on the warrant.
Second it.
A motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Article 31 is the article to amend the Carver zoning bylaw, Section 2320, the table of dimensional requirements. And I think that is where the change from 65 to 40 feet.
That is correct. Last year at town meeting, the height of a building in Green Business Park was increased from 40 to 65 feet in anticipation of Hillwood potentially developing the property. With Hillwood's departure from the scene, we are looking to change the zoning back to the 40 feet. Had a discussion with the fire chief to make sure that this didn't cause any qualms with him. He had no objections to the change.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to place Article 31 on the warrant?
I move that we place Article 31 on the warrant.
Second that.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Article 32 is the article to amend the Carver zoning bylaw, Section 3170, approval increase from 1 year to 2 years lapse of site plan approval to be consistent with time allowed for special permits.
Yes. So presently under the Carver zoning bylaw, special permits are good for 2 years. Site plans are good for 1 year. There are a number of projects that require both. And so what happens is if someone can't execute their permit immediately, they may have to come back to the planning board within a year to extend the time of their site plan. So what this does is it puts both the special permit and the site plan on the same schedule for 2 years to execute the plan before they lapse. Massachusetts general law allows 3 years for special permits, so we're right in the middle for 2 years for a special permit. And then the site plan will be equivalent for 2 years as well.
All right. Is there a motion to place Article 32 on the warrant?
I move that we place Article 32 on the warrant.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Article 33, increase the percentage of affordable units for townhouse developments to 15%.
Yes, in this case, we looked at three different areas of town, two different zoning districts where there was the percentage of affordable was sort of 15%, 20%, 10%. So we looked at sort of trying to even them out and make them all equivalent. So at the end, we decided only to opt for the townhouse development and increase its affordable percentage from 10% to 15%. In the discussions that we had with the board, I noted that the difference between a 40B, which is 25%, and potential 20% that was originally proposed aren't very far apart. So what you might see if you start to push that number of required affordable units up too far, you may find developers who decide, well, I'm not going to do the zoning bylaw because it's a percentage is not that much different from 40B. So I'll just follow 40B instead and don't have to deal with any of the town's regulations. So just trying to make some consistency within those bylaws by making those amendments as we did.
All right. Thank you. Is there a motion to place Article 33 on the warrant?
Motion to place Article 33 on the warrant.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. And finally, Article 34, delete from Carver zoning bylaw expired moratorium, Section 4970.
Yes, so this is to remove an expired moratorium on non-medical recreational marijuana. So when you create a moratorium, it becomes zoning, and it goes into your bylaw. And it stays in your bylaw forever and ever until town meeting votes to take it out. In this case, it was a moratorium that expired in June 30th, 2019. And while it was there was a moratorium on it, the town voted at town meeting in April 22nd, 2019 to create a non-medical marijuana overlay district. So this is just words taking up space in our zoning bylaw that don't need to be in there.
Just house cleaning?
House cleaning.
All right. Is there a motion to place Article 34 on the warrant?
Move we place Article 34 on the warrant.
Second that.
You have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Mr.
Right.
Bott.
Thank you for
Really
having me.
appreciate it.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
All right. The next one on our list is the capital budget, but I see Mr. Mahar and Mr. Germain here from the FinCom committee. They're probably here to talk about the Finance Committee bylaw amendment. Okay, so if you folks would like to come up. Mr. Germain, are you here to talk about the amendment, or is it just Mr. Mahar?
I'm more than happy to let Mr. Mahar do whatever he likes, and I'll just interject when he gets something wrong.
All right.
But I'll be happy to help you out if you need.
Okay.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Mahar. Appreciate you
thank
coming in
you.
this evening.
Always a pleasure to be in front of the board. We're gonna wait for Sarah?
We can,
Okay.
yeah. Mr. Mahar, it was primarily you and Mr. Clark that wrote this bylaw, is that correct? Or?
It is myself and Mr. Clark that did the amendments to it and took out some language that we didn't feel was necessary, put in some more definitive, descriptive language, and pretty much, modernized it, I would say. And what we did was we looked at some from bylaws in the Finance Committee from several surrounding towns, probably half a dozen or so, and found that they did have some restrictions on FinCom members, which basically this is not in favor of that, nor were we. And it just seems that once a town gets something like a bylaw or something else, they say, why reinvent the wheel? And they each do get a copy of it and change a word or two and get their own. They were very much alike, whatever. So what we wanted to do was strike out some language that we didn't think was necessary, just took up space. Identify that the FinCom is an advisory committee with no decision-making abilities, to about the availability of a stipend to allow a member of the FinCom to be on another board. Okay, which it doesn't supposedly allow that now. And then to really, one of the things was define what a person of financial ability or responsibility really is. Shall be defined as an individual hired to perform legal, accounting, or assessing services for the town, and who is paid for this service as a contractor.
Well, why don't we go through piece by piece? So 4.3.1, that's just a pretty minor chair that you added you give yourself, the finance committee, the
Yep.
ability to elect a chair and a vice chair.
Yep.
That seems pretty straightforward. Anybody have any questions on that? That pretty clear, okay. And then we have 4.3.4. And why don't you give us your thoughts on that a little bit?
Well, it's just the point that the Finance Committee is an advisory committee. There's no decision-making abilities there. It's just recommendations, and we realize that. Just wanted, just to highlight that.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on 4.3.4?
Sure. I get it that it's an advisory committee, but I think I brought this up at the last meeting, is that it gets voted upon at town meeting, 100 and whatever the number is for the reserve fund. That then makes it part of the finance committee's responsibility when someone comes before them for a fund transfer. They're making decisions. So they do kind of have a financial responsibility to use that money wisely.
Does that not have to go in front of the select board first before it gets to the Finance Committee, or not?
That doesn't, Mr. Fennessy, I can't recall.
It's supposed to, but
Yeah.
I don't think it ever does.
Mr., why don't we not have the point of orders? Why don't you just join Mr. Mahar up at the table?
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Hey, Alan, come on.
But I think you asked this question the
Yeah,
last
yeah.
time, John. And the fact of the matter is that yes, FinCom has $125,000 in a reserve account that is voted by town meeting, in effect making the Finance Committee a mini town meeting, if you would. But in order for those funds to be expended, and this year it's in the budget for $175,000, in order for those funds to be expended, the department, let's just pick a department, let's say O&M, they come up short, or Cara Dayhill in the clerk's office last year, comes up a little short, so she informs the town administrator that I'm trying to do this, but I don't have the money in my budget. Can we get a transfer from the reserve account? Mr. Fennessy would go to the finance director, and he'd say, they need to have X dollars in their account. Is it true they don't have enough in their account? The finance director could confirm that statement, and then the department head, being the town clerk in this instance, would put in a formal request for a transfer to the town administrator. Bob would sign off on it. Sue Moakland would sign, or the current, whoever the finance director is, but in this case, Sue Moakland would sign off on it. And then it would become an agenda item for FinCom. Then Cara Dayhill would come back before FinCom. We'd have the town administrator and the finance director in that meeting, and they would explain why this account is short and why they need these funds. And then the finance committee would vote on whether to approve or deny the transfer. But that's a process that's granted to the FinCom every year at town meeting. It's not something, we don't get an automatic, replenishment of that every year. That's voted on by town meeting. So there's so much transparency in that process that we actually don't have any outside abilities. Now, let's take it one step further. Let's suppose that it was, and I'll give you a different scenario. Let's suppose it was the fire department, just a moment. Like it was with the Cascade machine. We approved a fund of $77,000 for the Cascade machine, told them, go ahead and order it. Beth Salger, the Finance Committee Vice Chairman, who was not the Vice Chair at that time, because her husband Josh is a firefighter, she abstained from that vote. So even though she didn't have to, but she abstained from that vote. So that vote was taken with all the proper channels and all of the vetting that was required. And then when it came to FinCom, you might even remember that, Beth abstained from that vote. And just because she felt that's what she should do because Josh is a firefighter. So we kind of self-police, but that's, Michael Malinowski a long time ago said, in essence, the reserve account makes you a mini town meeting without having to go through a whole bunch of hoops and ladders in case budgets run short for an emergency or whatever the case.
For point of clarification for the folks at home, what is the Finance Committee reserve account this year?
This year it's 125,000. We haven't touched it yet.
And there's a proposal on town meeting to increase that?
There's a proposal in the current budget to go to 175.
Okay.
Because we think that the 125 hasn't really been updated since it was since its inception. I think that Bob and I had discussed that we'd like to see it get to 200 just because of the way things are going. And if it's not used, the money just goes back in as a turn back to the budget for the following year.
Okay. All right, any other questions on 4.3.4? Anyone? Okay. 4.3.5. Mr. Mahar?
Just taking out some superfluous language.
Okay, pretty clear? Any questions from anyone on that? All right. 4.3.6. I think that's just basically cleaning up some language as well, correct?
Yep, that was a big part of this, cleaning up some language, more descriptive and definitive.
And then 4.3.7. Why don't you give us your thoughts on that?
This was to talk about the member of Finance Committee being eligible for, to be on another board, as long as there wasn't, not a person of financial responsibility, and that got very, very meticulously defined as a person of financial responsibility shall be defined as an individual hired to perform legal, accounting, or assessing services for the town and who is paid for this service as a contractor.
So before we discuss this and enter into possible votes on this, I think, I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I think it might be best to take separate votes on the first few parts and a separate vote on 4.3.7, because I think there's a lot more substantive changes in 4.3.7 than there are in the other parts of this bylaw change. I don't know how the board feels about that, but I think that's my personal feeling, that we should take separate votes on the first parts and a different vote on 4.3.7. What's the thought of the board?
I agree.
Anyone have issues with that? Are there any other parts of this bylaw that people would like to have a separate vote on? Anything? No? Okay. So, why don't we hear discussion from the board? Anyone?
Are we going back to?
But any parts of this you like?
No, I think I'm pretty clear on the 4.3, the 4. So,
Okay.
so I guess guys, call me old school, but I just liked the fact on 4.3.7 that the Finance Committee wasn't involved in other committees because there was no issue. I know you can recuse yourself. I know you can, and you do. You police yourselves, as Alan had said. But my feeling is I don't know. It's just what I'm used to. It's what I feel comfortable with. So.
I tend to agree, and that's not a reflection on the current Finance Committee at all. It just makes things cleaner, and just, if it's something people have to do, then people don't have to remember to do it, or someone new comes in and doesn't know, or, and there's no even an appearance of any kind of conflict. And again, that's not a reflection on the current board, which I think is a great committee.
Yeah, and again, having been on the Finance Committee, and that was always the always understood at the time that if you were on the finance committee, you weren't on anything else. And I think that's important. I think it's important to have that separation. I did take some time this afternoon. I went out and tried to look at some of the neighboring towns or the towns similar to us and see what their rules were. I went to the town of Kingston. I couldn't find anything in their bylaws that mentioned
It was nothing.
really anything. It was very nothing.
No, Bob did that.
I had a really difficult time at the town of Plymouth website finding almost anything to go to anything, but I did find some others. The town of Wareham clearly has language in their bylaws that says if you're on the finance committee, you shall hold no other town office or anything. So Wareham has wording. The town of Halifax has wording that says same thing. The town of Middleborough and the town of Plimpton, they all have wording in their bylaws that basically say, if you're on the finance committee, you're not on anything else.
And, you know, and we looked at all those, and we know all that. And we knew about Kingston, and we knew about the others. And just a feeling that just because it's been that way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. You know, and it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it wrong. It's just modernize this thing and make it so less restrictive. And that was basically the intention. Nothing more. And we deal with good people, we deal with professionals. If there's a point to be recused about, then the expectation is that those people would do that, just the same way that it would be for this board or any other board. And that was our focus, and that's why we came up with that language.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bain?
You mentioned Middleborough. You have to go look farther than the bylaw. You have to look at the charter. Middleborough Finance Committee puts on town meeting. The select board cannot overrule the vote of the finance committee. So in that scenario, you're absolutely correct. We would then be a governing body. We would present a budget that this is what we have, whether the five of you like it or you don't, this is what's being presented to the town. They actually invite the select board to attend town meeting. It's kind of a strange, but that's how it works. Obviously, I'm pretty well versed in what Middleborough does, and you know that. If that were the case in this town, I would say you're absolutely correct. I truly would. But the fact of the matter is that, and I've said this for 4 years now, we have virtually no authority whatsoever. We present to the best of our ability after interviewing departments and so forth and so on. And you and John's my mentor. You have both guided me immensely on the finance committee. We go through it, we do the nuts and bolts. We work with the town administrator, we work with the finance director, we come up with a plan to make it work, and then we come and present the budget to the select board. If anything in that budget that you don't like, just because we said, hey, you've got to do this, doesn't mean you've got to do anything. We don't like what you propose. Thank you very much for all your hard work, FinCom. We're doing it this way. And there's nothing we can do about that. So because of that scenario, I always felt, and obviously this whole thing has been contentious for years because I sit on other boards. And whether that was correct in the beginning or it should never have happened in the beginning or how whatever was. I certainly don't want this to become the germane rule by any means. And I have a fear of that. I truly do. My term expires a year from June 30th and I'm done. So not for that reason, but we have a board now of 7 people. We can go to 11. Why would we want more restriction? If there's somebody that's sitting on, in a good example, Savory just walked out the door. If Savory wants to come on and join the finance committee with all his years and his historical knowledge of the town and his care about the town, why shouldn't he? Good God Almighty. Why wouldn't we want that? The only restriction that we put into this was that no elected member of the select board should serve on the FinCom. And that's for an obvious reason. Because you really, truly are the CEOs and the end-all, be-all to the town's operation, save town meeting vote. They're the only ones that can really overrule you. Nobody else in this building on any board, committee, or commission can circumvent the rule of the select board. So that's the reason we wrote it the way we wrote it. We'll certainly acquiesce to whatever the pleasure of the select board is. I think the current wording is confusing at best. I think it's crazy at worst. It's a catch-22 because it defines the fact that no elected member of any board, or no elected officer, of any board or committee or commission, and yet the moment you get put on the FinCom, you are an officer. So therefore, you can't be on it if you're an officer, but the moment you get put on it, you're an officer. So it's a weird thing, and we should never need a Philadelphia lawyer to explain it. We tried to simplify it. So I'm sure that that's the sticking point. I understand what your opinion is, honestly and truly, Mr. Chairman. I understand yours too, John. You go back to the old school days, and this is what you always thought to be the case. When I first got put on conservation, it was Jim Nowen who said, I don't think you can be on conservation if you're on FinCom. And I went down and I saw Lynn Doyle, and I said, they tell me I can't be on this. And she got the book out, and she says, oh, no, it just says here, not if you're an officer. Well, you're not an officer of the town. The select board of the officers of the town. So that's where that started from, and that's how I got approved. It certainly wasn't to circumvent something. But, my compadre is an elected member of the RDA. What happens with that? Both he and Ron serve on the advisory board for Comcast. What happens with that? What if one of our other members who has young children want to join the recreation committee? What happens with that? Do we have to sit back and say, geez, thanks anyway, pick one? I just think that we're in a day and age when we're big boys and girls now. We really, truly can police ourselves. And we're only one vote of, even if it's only the minimum 4, but we're only one vote of, at this point, 7, up to 11. During the time that I've been chair, we've had 11 members of the Finance Committee. We certainly have grown to police ourselves. So it's just my 2 cents.
Does anyone else have any thoughts?
I have a question. This has always bugged me, not about just this.
No, go ahead.
So a regular, full, or part-time employee is not eligible to be on the FinCom. So technically, if a policeman wants to be on FinCom, and he just recluses himself for any discussion on police budgets, would that be different than?
Because he's a regular, full, or part-time employee. Regular employee versus, and I use the word regular employee because we all get a stipend, you included. Technically, in the town's eyes, you get a W-2. So you're an employee. I get a W-2, Pat gets a W-2, you all get W-2s. Right. If something were to happen, we have indemnity from the town, but we are still considered employees of the town. But we are not regular employees of the town. This is not a full or a part-time job. This is a thank you, is what the stipend is. But in order to give us the stipend, we become a W-2 employee. A police officer or even a firefighter, because he is an employee of the town and covered by their insurances and so forth and so on, it makes it ineligible. And this goes back to, I guess, the O'Donnell rule where, we had employees that sat on the boards and so forth and so on. And that obviously has its own issues attached to it. But that's why it says regular, full, or part-time. It doesn't just use the word any employee, because then technically, again, it'd be like the catch-22. The moment you get put on it, you become an employee, but you can't be an employee to be on it. So it'd be that double-edged sword. I hope that helped.
Confused me even more, but it's okay.
I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Yeah. Anyone else?
So one other question. So basically in the past, it was never a law. It was just assumed by FinCom members. There was a bylaw that you could only be.
No.
Well, there was. It was the as I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going from memory, it was the interpretation of town council and I think a previous town administrator. The bylaw also referenced if you were an officer of the town, you couldn't serve on the finance committee. I think it came down to the interpretation. I certainly, when I was in the FinCom, and I think Mr. Cotter would agree with me, we were all of the opinion that if you were on the FinCom, you were on the FinCom. That's it. And then I believe we had a previous town administrator who may have interpreted that definition of officer a little bit differently and started making appointments to other boards and committees. And then ultimately it came to a meeting where we had a discussion with town council. Ms. Hewens, believe you may have been chair at the time. I think it was a Zoom meeting that we had with Mr. Corvo, where he gave us the interpretation, or his interpretation of what the term officer meant.
That's correct.
And if we followed his interpretation, then if you were a member of the finance committee, you couldn't be on anything else.
That's my memory as well, yep.
Well, it's close. But it wasn't a Zoom meeting, it was right in this room. And Greg's interpretation was that any member of any board, committee, or commission that serves on a board, committee, or commission established in either federal, state, or town bylaw is in fact an officer of the town. We were all surprised to hear that, but he said that's the way it works. But the bylaw also specifically stated that membership on the finance committee was open to any registered voter except those on any elected or appointed, except those of elected or appointed officers of the town. So somehow that got turned around into, if you're on something else, you're an officer of the town, so now you can't be on FinCom. And then after that meeting, I said to him, yeah, but if you get put on FinCom, you become an officer of the town, and now you can't be on FinCom. And he kind of chuckled and said, that's a fight for another day. So that's how that all came about.
There may have been a subsequent meeting. I would respectfully disagree with you. I'm almost positive there was a Zoom meeting. And the reason I remember it is because I was sitting in my backyard outside on a.
That could have been
and I think there
after
was
this
some
all
comments
began.
from other
I don't
members of the
disagree.
board that I seemed to have a pretty comfortable position
Yes.
at the time. So that's why I remember it so clearly. Ms. Bogart?
Can I make a motion to put Article 12, Part 4.3.1 on the warrant as written here?
Yes, you can make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to put 4.3.1, correct? On the warrant. We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
I
And,
have something to say.
yes, Ms. Bogart.
Can I make a motion to put Article 12, Section 4.3.4 on the warrant as written?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
I have something to say.
Let me guess.
You want to do it? Make a motion to put Article 12, 4.3.5 on the warrant as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
I have a question on that.
Yes.
Pat, the reason you took, or the FinCom, the reason those were stricken, does that eliminate the recommendations that show up in the warrant?
Say that again?
Where it says the report shall contain the FinCom's recommendation for town meeting action on all requested.
I think the first line does it, puts it back in.
Not sure of the question, Jim.
On 4.3.5,
Yeah.
the first line that was stricken, the report shall contain the Finance Committee's recommendations for town meeting action on all requested appropriations together with recommendations on other matters in the warrant. Does that eliminate your recorded vote, whether you recommend each article?
No.
No, I think
don't
that
believe
was,
so. No.
I think that was the annual
opinion.
report.
Okay.
That was in relation to because it says you shall provide an annual
Oh,
report.
it is the annual report.
It is the annual
The
report.
first line, if I may, Mr. Chairman, first line says, Finance Committee shall prepare a report for insertion on the warrant for the annual town meeting.
Yeah, it's the
not
annual, it's the report.
not
It goes in the
report,
book.
It's going into the town meeting warrant.
But it goes in the book. It doesn't go in the
Well,
warrant.
this, what you have written here says
But
it
you
goes
know,
for the annual
This
town
is,
meeting.
yeah,
for-
this has always
in the
been,
warrant. That's right.
yeah.
It says in the
point.
warrant for the annual town meeting.
I don't think you should strike that sentence.
No, we're leaving that sentence in.
No, it's stricken.
Stricken.
No, the
The
town,
report shall, no, that's not.
The second
Report shall contain Finance Committee's recommendations for town meeting action on all requested appropriations. That's standard in almost every town, probably every town. together with recommendations on
I
other
think that's
matters
stricken.
in the warrant as in their judgment should be brought to the attention of the town.
I think that's an error. I don't believe that was, I don't think that was stricken.
Your 7-0 votes and any other. any
Right,
other-
I don't think that was stricken in the discussions. I have to go
Okay, that's
back
how
and
it
look.
came to us.
Well, I appreciate that, but I don't believe that that's what we had put down. I think that's an error.
You want to leave that alone?
I'd like to leave that alone.
So perhaps
yeah,
we want to
natural.
vote against, we want to not put that in the warrant? Is that,
I think,
Sorry.
yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
glad you
that
brought
way
it up.
stays the
'cause-
same.
yeah.
Nope.
If you vote against, it'll stay the same as it is.
So-
Right.
Well, I mean, it's up to town.
So your
meeting.
recommendation is that we vote not to include that in the warrant?
That could be a vote.
That could be a vote. Okay.
And
Or you can just eliminate it from
Yeah,
the
we'll
wording.
take out of the
Just
warrant.
take it out.
Yeah.
That way, by voting.
That was never our intent. I think there was an
Yeah.
assumption that that was just the annual, that was the annual report.
Yeah, the book.
So, yeah, it was for the
Sorry.
book. I don't think we ever,
I'm a little bit lost. By,
I would have the
okay,
same thing.
so a lot of different people speaking at the same time here. So would you, is it the choice of the finance committee that you no longer would like to make any changes?
yeah,
to
leave that one alone if you
4.3.5?
don't mind.
I rescind my motion.
Okay, so we're
Thank
not
you.
going to take any action in 4.3.5? Or Mr. Fennessy, do we need to take action here?
So I
motion
would,
not-
because it's already been submitted as stricken.
Okay.
I would take a vote not
Not to include it in
put
the
that
warrant.
on the warrant.
I'll make
Okay.
a motion not to include
Thank you.
4.3.5 on the annual
Second.
town meeting.
Yeah, that's fine. I think
We have a
that-
motion and a second not to include 4.3.5. Discussion.
We can blame Rob.
Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
We'll be sure to blame Ron.
There you go.
It's not here.
That's what he gets for not showing up.
I got something to say.
Ms. Bova,
I make a motion that we put Article 12, 4.3.6 on the warrant as
Second.
written.
all right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on 4.3.6.
Does the stipend have to be stated in here, or that's just another?
No, that's on Schedule C of the budget,
Okay,
under the block that says stipends.
okay. I just know that in the past, like we discussed, this is.
No, I agree.
It's time to,
But it just, this does away,
Existing for a long
but I
time.
just didn't know if it had to be listed here because. it's
I'm-
never been
Good
listed
point.
anywhere.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. This just does away with the wording that says they shall serve without pay, because in 2016, town meeting voted a stipend. It just never got changed. But that's all listed in Schedule C on the town warrant.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Oh, pick me.
Ms. Bogart,
I make a motion that we do not put Article 12, 4.3.7 on the warrant.
Second.
all right, we have a motion and a second not to put 4.3.7 on the warrant.
Okay, discussion. I'll start.
Okay.
So if we do not put this on, this reverts back to the
The original.
Current
the
language.
original confusing
Nothing there.
bylaw that's there. That-
Well, it reserved, that part, 4.3.7,
Okay,
yes.
so,
So it'll say, except that no elected or appointed town officer or regular town employee or person holding a position of financial, I don't know if that was in there. Anyway, it'll revert back to the original.
It'll still have language council on aging in there.
council on aging will be
I
on
know,
that.
yeah.
And it will eliminate every member of the finance committee from being able to be on the finance committee, because they're all officers of the town, and therefore they can't be on the finance committee. This is where we got into trouble with this bylaw. Amend it, please. But, to take that wording out of it, because if you leave it the way it is right now, it simply says that if you're on FinCom, you can't be on FinCom.
No, Mr. Corbo said any committee, commission, or board that's established by federal, state, or local
Correct.
law.
But maybe it would be helpful if I read 4.3.7 the way it is right now on the town bylaws. Okay, this is what it says right now. Any registered voter of the town shall be eligible for appointment to the Finance Committee or Council on Aging, except that no elected or appointed town officer or regular town employee or person holding a position of financial responsibility for the town shall be eligible for membership in such agency. No member of a special town committee shall be authorized to vote as a member of such agency on any matter pertaining to the duties of a special committee of which he is a member.
Okay. So why don't we amend it just to cut out "or Council on Aging"?
Yeah, that was my thought as well.
But then don't you still get left with the wording that says town officer? Read it again. Tell me what that says, Mr. Chairman.
I believe we've heard from Mr. Corbo.
I think Mr. Corbo was wrong, and he agrees that he was incorrect. You're welcome to ask him.
My memory is Mark's memory as well. And
I appreciate that.
We don't have Mr. Corbo here, but.
But if you read the sentence again in its simplistic, just in its simplicity, if you don't mind, because I don't have it in front of me.
Well, Mr. Fennessy, this is what I would suggest, if the board is willing. We need to have a meeting sometime in the next week, perhaps next Tuesday night, or perhaps another day, on the solar pilot agreements. Perhaps we can include 4.3.7 in that meeting as well, and have Mr. Corbo
Yeah, we
present,
can
whether
do
he's
that.
here or
Yeah.
on Zoom, but present in some way, so we can have him there for that discussion.
We can do that.
Would that make sense for the board?
Sure.
We'd also
Yeah.
request an opportunity to attend that,
Sure.
so we can make our case also.
Absolutely.
So I guess the bottom line is this. How do we want this bylaw to read? That basically FinCom should only be on FinCom? Because I'm just saying this now, that if that's the reason, if we're gonna have another meeting, that this might have to be massaged even more, because we don't want to create more confusion with a new bylaw.
I agree.
So either,
agree.
and I know you guys have talked about at the beginning, either we're on it or we're off it.
That's right.
And that's what,
And we shouldn't
was
need
the
to
whole
call
thought.
town council every time there's a question. And the way it's currently written, I had people ask me, why does it even use the word agency? What are they thinking when they wrote that? So we don't know the history of this original bylaw, where it came from. But the way it's currently written, it is my personal belief, as well as every member of FinCom, that because it specifically excludes elected or appointed officers of the town from serving in such agency, the moment you get put on the FinCom, you become an officer of the town. So therefore, you would be excluded.
Well,
It's a catch-22.
that,
I don't think that was the.
I mean, clearly, I think.
That
we
may
need
not
to-
have
we
ever
need to
been the
get some
intent.
Legal guidance, but that's not the guidance that I recall us getting from Mr. Corbo. I recall Mr. Corbo saying that if you're a member of, pick a committee, the Conservation Commission.
'Cause that was the
zoning
argument
board,
at the
pick
time.
anyone, that you're an officer of the town.
Correct.
And that would mean you were precluded, that's why a Finance Committee member was precluded from being on another board or committee.
It was actually flipped a different way. It was because I was on Concom, and that was why this whole issue came to light, because they wanted you, well, some wanted me off of Concom because I was on FinCom. And this is the angle that you used. And then ultimately it was decided to let me serve out my term, and then a month later you reappointed me to Concom for another 3-year term. And so it just
Well,
became
and I think
kind
if
of
as I
convoluted.
recall the discussions at that time, the reason we allowed that was because we knew there were ongoing discussions about the Finance Committee bylaw. But I think it's probably
we had
incumbent
two
upon
members-
everyone to have have Mr. Corbo here for these.
well, I think it's similar to when Jen and I were on the planning board and got elected to select board. We couldn't be on both.
Right.
We had that discussion back and forth. So because we were on planning board, we didn't, I see what you're saying with this, Alan, but the appointed town officer, once you become appointed to the FinCom, you're an officer.
And then you can't be on FinCom.
Right, but again, we were on planning, we got on select board, we know you can't be on both.
But that's not why, Jim. You couldn't remain on planning because the select board bylaws dictated that. Truthfully.
Right.
This, excuse me.
What I'm saying is, because you're already in that board,
Right. What it says is no elected or appointed town officer can be a member of, because that means because you were already appointed to something else.
Right.
Ms. Bo.
Well, the first thing says, I'm hearing your point of the finance committee members, if this can't be on the finance committee, but the way I'm reading it is no elected or appointed town officer which could be a current finance member, but go back, shall be eligible for appointment. If they would be kicked off and couldn't be on, that would say reappointment. So if you're on it now, if you're an elected or appointed town official, technically the way this is written, you serve it out and you're not eligible for reappointment. So the current finance committee could exist in its form, but then they would not be eligible for reappointment if they're on something else. I mean, that's right there. The word, the prefix re's not there. So I think it reads as we're saying. So if anything, I would rescind my motion and make a new one just to strike Council on Aging. But I think the finance committee couldn't exist as is, doesn't make sense because of the lack of reappointment.
Well,
Right. And just, if I may, just looking at these bylaws, because this has been my point, I know I've discussed it with you, Mr. Fennessy. I think at some point we need to put some kind of committee together to go through all of these bylaws, not necessarily to change the bylaws, but just to change I think there've been changes over time and they don't necessarily read the way they should read. But when you look at 4.3 I'm sorry, let me get back, 4.3, which is the Finance Committee bylaw, and I know at the very end of that, it references Finance Committee or Council on Aging. I wonder if that was just a typo at some kind, because
Probably.
the very next bylaw, 4.4, is the Council on Aging bylaw, which is
Most
completely
likely.
separate. So I wonder if that line that says Finance Committee or Council on Aging was just an error at some point that somehow got in here and never got taken out. But either way, is the board
Mr.
of
Chairman?
agreement that we should have this on our next agenda at the next meeting and have council here to handle that, or would they like to take some action tonight? What is the pleasure of the board?
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
It's obvious, and you know me, I call it like I see it. It's obvious you want this restricted to just FinCom. So why don't you eliminate most of this wording, offer up an amendment, make it that any registered voter of the town of Carver, except an elected member of the select board or regular or full-time employee, full or part-time employee, or somebody with a special financial interest, can be on the finance committee. And once on the finance committee, then you may not be on, as a member of finance committee, you may not be on any of the board, committee, or commission. Bring in the wording that you really want to have in this thing that was in the capital outlay. You know that's exactly what you want. You know that's the end result. So just do it and get it over with. You don't want anyone on FinCom and on anything else. I think it's for different reasons, but that's me. I think it's going to hurt other people on this committee. Where does it put Pat on the RDA? They have a checkbook.
Well, first of all, if you recall, and I recall this, when Mr. Mahar got appointed to the RDA, several of us asked that question, and I don't remember who exactly was on that board, so but I know the question was asked, well, what about the Finance Committee bylaw? And we received guidance from the town administrator, not Mr. Fennessy, a previous town administrator, that the RDA was a state board and not a town board, and that's why Mr. Mahar was eligible for appointment to the RDA.
And yet
Now,
Mr.
I'm not a
Cuomo-
lawyer, so I won't speak to that advice, but that was the advice we received from the town administrator at that time, and that's why we proceeded with the appointment from Mr. Mahar onto the RDA.
It was an election.
But you were appointed
You were
prior to the
appointed
election.
first.
When
And
you were
Mr.
first,
Corbo sat in this room and said, any board or committee or commission established in federal, state, or local town bylaw makes you an officer of the town. So,
okay, I'm just.
you know, this is
speaking
what I'm
to
saying with this. This is why it's so convoluted.
Mr. Chair.
Perhaps Greg should come in.
Miss you.
I was going to suggest that we, since we're all here, pick a date and see if we can get Mr. Corbo to come down.
Yeah, I know he has town meetings going on right now, so let me check with him first. Okay, and I'll send something out to everybody.
Okay.
Okay, would
Thank
the
you.
proposed date work for everybody next Tuesday, March 28th?
After 6:30.
We can make the meeting start at 6:30.
Sure.
Would that work for everybody?
Sure.
Right now? So you can propose that to him if he has a
Okay,
town
it's
meeting.
school vacation week too.
Well,
Oh, no,
Yeah.
if he has a conflict.
I'm
then-
at
then
town
we'll-
meeting date.
If he has a conflict, then we'll send an
But we'll-
email out. We'll
yeah.
find, I don't think we can wait till our next scheduled meeting, which is April 4th. I don't think we can wait till that date.
Too late.
So if he has a conflict next Tuesday, then we'll come up with a mutually agreeable date that works for everybody. It might be an evening, might be a morning, but might be whatever we can find, where we can find common time here, but we'll make that work. Is that the preference of the board?
Sure, just a quick question. Does he have to come down or could he go on Zoom?
No, he could
Either way,
certainly
yeah.
be here on Zoom. I think it would be preferable if he could attend, but if he
Yeah.
can't, certainly he could attend on Zoom.
I know his preference is to attend,
Okay,
but we'll see.
Okay, motion.
okay. Well,
What-
I'm sorry, I
okay,
think
nope, go
Mr.
for it.
Hoffman has, did I
Okay.
see your hand up?
Just so a quick question, I mean, to get back to my original comment, I think before the next meeting, we all have to decide what we really want this bylaw to say. Now, obviously, we don't have to do it right now, but
No, I think we should discuss it right now. I think that's a good idea.
because otherwise, we're gonna just keep going in circles. You know, if we want it like was it the capital outlay?
Which we
bylaw
changed,
was
by the way,
at
2
one
years ago.
time? Because I remember when we first discussed this, when the first year I was on the board, I believe, we talked about this. And the first discussion was, does it want to be this similar to the capital outlay?
Right.
And that's when I first heard about that.
Because that's written in a very clear way.
But not anymore. We changed that 2 years ago, and that's been removed.
So maybe that's how we want this one to read.
That's what I'm saying, that's where we have to discuss it. If we want to cut and dry, or if we want to have some other inclusions, which I'm open to anything right now, but we're just going in circles.
Speaking of bylaws in general, my personal preference is always to make it as clear as possible, so you never have to ask a lawyer for what the bylaw says. I think any person should be able to read that bylaw and understand what it says.
So my second question is, let's say we come up with a bylaw, we amend this, and basically says, you're on FinCom, you can't be on anything else. That's the bylaw presented. That then gets brought to town meeting, and that portion gets rejected. It then goes back to what's the way it is right now, correct?
Yep.
Unless somebody makes a motion to amend it.
Unless somebody makes a motion to amend it with some other language.
And now with all these changes you want to make, we're not having a finance committee meeting, so now FinCom will have no input into this at all now. Because the only time we'll be able to discuss this will be the night of town meeting, so we'll have to get up and make a statement. Because usually we have a meeting before town meeting, but by then it's already in print to whatever the board decides they want.
I mean, you could have a finance committee meeting. There's several weeks until
Well, I'm sure we could.
town meeting.
I'm just trying to play out all scenarios, that's all, so.
We could produce a Part A and a Part B to this. Do it our way and then present it your way and let town meeting decide which way they want to go with it. Do your own wording and have it be this is the FinCom recommendation, this is the select board recommendation, and see what the town meeting wants to do. Because ultimately, they make the decision anyway. But the problem is if we don't come up with the right number, and you're absolutely correct, if they say no to whatever's proposed, then it goes back to the ambiguity of the current bylaw, which sits around for another 12 months, that nobody understands what it really says. And if you get 4 lawyers in the room, they'll tell you that that bylaw says 4 different things.
Well,
Tell me that I'm
pick
wrong,
on the
Mr.
lawyers.
Fennessy. Tell me that I'm wrong, Mr. Fennessy.
I have 4 different things in my mind. My 4 lawyers.
So I agree with the chair wholeheartedly. I hate a bylaw that needs to have somebody come in and treat us like children to tell us what it really says. Because that's nothing more than, in my opinion, this is what this really says. I'd like to have a bylaw that says this is what it is so that anybody can understand it. Please, if this is, honestly and truly, if you want to restrict FinCom membership to just FinCom, while I personally believe that that's wrong, we'll certainly go along with the will of the select board.
well, okay. I think we all, the 5 members of this board need to do some thinking between now and our next meeting. So we come in with some clear guidelines. I think I know how I feel, and
Okay.
Yeah.
Going to Jim, because I think Jim's right. We got to figure this out. I can ask Elaine to help me print this from here if it would be clearer. I took 4.3.7 as we are looking at it, and I took the parts that I think we would want to keep and some of the changes that they suggested, and came up with this. And if you want me to print it, that's fine, but it's 4.3 if you look at it. So you can kind of follow along. Any registered voter of the town shall be eligible for appointment to the Finance Committee, except that no elected or appointed town officer or regular town employee or person holding a financial responsibility for the town shall be eligible for membership on the Finance Committee. No member of a town committee or board shall be authorized to vote as a member of the Finance Committee on any matter pertaining to the budget or funding of a board of which she is a member. So I took some of the stuff they were putting in there that seemed like it might make sense if we're cleaning it up.
No.
So if I may, so there's a conflict right there, because
Okay.
they can't be on the
Yeah.
board or committee. And then the second part of that is saying
Right.
they can't deal with any budget matter of a committee or board of which he or she is a member. So you would strike
Okay,
that
so-
second.
So that just needs to be taken out completely.
Yeah.
No member, because that's still in the original.
Last down here, yeah.
I think you got to get away from the elected or appointed officer part. I think it should simply define itself and say no elected member of the select board, and then go on to say that no member of the finance committee may serve on any other board, committee, or commission.
Well, I think we have a good idea of where the members of the board are here. I think what we need is some legal guidance to give us the correct wording to say what we want to say. So unless somebody has something new, I think we should move on from this discussion.
Well, I would,
And-
Jim, does that accomplish what you asked? Because I think you were right in saying, let's figure out what we want now.
Well, I mean,
So,
honestly, I think if we don't want the FinCom members to be on any other committee, let's just spell it out.
Thank
Black and
you.
white.
so
But
let's
clear as
approach
possible.
town council
I
with that.
I mean, and if that's what we
where it's going.
want, then we go that way. If not, then we have to massage it a little bit so we can include some of these others. And
So can I ask this one more question and then I'll stop talking? So are you then going to come up with additions to this bylaw that's going to exempt certain other committees and groups? Like it's going to exempt the RDA, it's going to exempt people that are on the Cable Advisory Committee, it's going to
So
exempt?
I think before we start exempting people, again, this board received guidance from a previous town administrator who told us that the town bylaw, as it currently stands, did not affect the RDA. That's why that appointment was made in the first place. I think we need to get guidance from town council.
Okay, and what
So I
about the
think
Cable
that-
Advisory Board?
so the other thing too, I was going to ask this, so the Cable Advisory Board and RDA, are those state agencies?
RDA is.
And again, if that's what they're identified as, then they're exempt from this, and they would be exempt from the new one.
Yeah, I think,
And
The cable outfit is a 501c3.
Yeah, but they wouldn't be exempt, Jim,
It's a nonprofit.
because again, we can keep going around in circles, and I don't mean,
I think we're really at a point now where we're just circling the way.
No, but what I'm saying is, we just have to think, because those two in particular affect current members. So would those two be exempt, and if they are, why?
Well, the nonprofit would be definitely.
Okay,
That's,
But Area 58 appoints its own board.
right, that's a
Yeah, that
501c3.
doesn't come from here.
okay, so that's not even in the equation then.
So if we were told that the RDA was exempt at the time. I
how can they
remember
be?
that.
They have their own checkbook.
I'm just saying that that's what we were told. I don't know.
So let's find out why were they, and if so, let's spell it out so there's not
Yeah.
any more guessing.
Yeah.
And again,
I agree.
would there be other boards or
And
committees
it may
that
very well be.
would fall outside of that? I just, one way or the other, whatever we all decide, we just have to make it crystal clear.
Yeah.
Because I agree with Alan and Pat that very confusing.
Th-
You can
isn't it?
interpret it different ways.
And get past this, because this has been hanging around
4
for a
years.
long time. And
As
it's
long as
time
we
to-
were on the board,
Yeah.
when we first came on, that was.
That's right.
Initially.
4 years.
Yep.
Wow,
You
3.
know, we got differences in thought process here, and that's okay. That's why we all get together and come up with, try to find some common ground. But if the will of the select board is to have certain criteria in there, then I think you got to talk to town council and get it worded in such a way that we rid ourselves of the ambiguity in there and the superfluous wording and modernize it, as I said before, and come up with the final version. So that way, nobody's got an argument.
Yeah.
All right, so Ms. Weston, can you just to bring some finality to this, just refresh my memory. So we have put 4.3 we put everything except 4.3.7 on the warrant, correct?
No.
No. Oh, sorry, that's right. We voted to not put 4.3.5 on the warrant.
Right.
Correct.
Everything but 4.3.5 and 4.3.7, correct?
There's no vote on 4.3.7 yet. There was a motion.
Right. But we put 4.3.
All the other ones.
All the other ones. All the ones are on the warrant. Okay, so we don't need to take any other action right now on this. All right. That's fine. Any final comments from the board before we move forward? Okay. So we will move on to Article 4, the capital budget and approval of bonding for the library roof and painting
Oh, it's-
and
oh,
I guess
town
that's-
hall siding.
Thank you
and-
very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Certainly don't need us to get in on the capital. Sure that John will do a great job, though they work very hard on this. And for the record, FinCom is entirely on board with this plan.
Thank you both for attending this evening. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, could we take out of order
Yeah.
so Kathy Kane can
Absolutely.
leave?
Absolutely.
Sitting patiently in the corner there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, absolutely. We'll go to the 13, right?
Yep.
The abutter lot sales program. Okay, we will go to Article 13, the new bylaw, the abutter lot sales program. Thank you very much. Sorry you had to wait so long.
It's okay. It was interesting.
Okay. Article 13. Let me just, when I get to it here, I'll read the wording. Yeah, we're almost there. All right. Article 13, the sale of low-value textile properties to abutters. All right.
Hi, Kathy Kay, Carver Treasurer Collector. So when the town forecloses on parcels for non-payment of taxes, they become in the possession of the custodianship of the treasurer, and then town committee would review to see whether those parcels have any use for the town, whether some department can put it to use, whether we want to retain ownership of the property or offer it up for sale at auction, which is the only way we can dispose of it legally. Several years ago, the town foreclosed on several what are considered land of low value parcels. Every year, the Department of Revenue puts out a value amount of what is considered land of low value. And these parcels are very small, and there is no buildable use for these parcels. And so we have had several of these parcels sitting in the custodianship of the treasurer for ever since we foreclosed on them back in 2018, I believe it was. So they were offered up for auction in 2019, and I think there were maybe 39 lots at that time and 2 sold. Since that time, I have been approached by direct abutters to purchase several of the lots. And without going through a full auction process, advertising, sending out notices to all abutters within, I think it's like 300 feet, which is a costly endeavor, we have no authority to dispose of these parcels. So we've noticed that there are several towns which have initiated this abutter lot sales program. And so that's what this is, to set forth for the town to approve the disposal of lots which are considered land of low value and not buildable for sale to direct abutters without going through an auction process. And there are certain restrictions, guidelines, and if approved for this process, and again, it would transfer custodianship actually to the select board, who would be the ones disposing of the properties to direct abutters. So then there is an application with guidelines, regulations, requirements that would have to be met to sell it to an abutter, and that would, once this is approved by the town, then the select board would approve the actual application and requirements and restrictions and guidelines that would be used for selling a parcel. And then you'll see I hope you'll see, there are 6 parcels in which I have been approached to sell to direct abutters. So then these are specific parcels that I would like to transfer to the select board for sale to a direct abutter.
Okay. Thank you. All right, there are questions from the board on this?
Well, I have, oh, sorry.
Nope, up to you.
I have one question. So if this becomes a bylaw of the town, would it then, going forward, apply to other lots of similar sizes?
Yes, and since we do have to propose the specific parcels that would be offered for sale to a direct abutter, I believe they would probably have to go through the select board, or I'm not sure, I haven't checked with town council about that. Would need approval for future lots that fall within the land of low value to be offered for sale to a direct abutter.
And this would just, this doesn't bind the select board to have to sell to an abutter, correct? So if for whatever reason, a parcel became available that the select board perhaps thought at some point could be affordable housing or whatever, even though it was a low-value lot, this article doesn't bind us to have to sell the lot.
Correct.
We could still say, well, we want to hold on to this one.
Correct, which is why these 6 parcels are specifically listed in the warrant article. So it's just at this point to approve, so the town would approve that, yes, the select board can go through this process of selling to a direct abutter, and then subsequent of which only these 6 parcels at this time are being requested that would fit within this category.
Okay.
So this only applies to those 6?
At this time, yes, but it would put the abutter lot program on the bylaws, so for future land of low value parcels, if it comes that nobody within the town has a use to retain the parcel, then we could offer it for sale to a direct abutter.
Because part of this says are presently unbuildable.
Yes, yep.
So would that mean future ones would have to be unbuildable as
Yes,
well?
yep.
If I may, and ultimately it's got to go on a town meeting warrant to sell land. So that would come to the next year or the year after, that she'd submit to the select board. And just like now, you wouldn't have to put the language to authorize, but you would have the language to authorize to sell these low value.
These
in the
future particular
future ones,
parcels.
yeah.
I just have one more question for you. So the number 2 Miles Standish Drive is actually, in terms of square feet, it's a buildable lot under current zoning. What is it? Why is it considered unbuildable?
That I can't address.
Our current zoning is
Yeah,
60,000 square feet.
I believe it's wet. I believe. I'm not sure though.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Well, okay, are there any other questions, Mr. Cotter?
I'm just trying to get the process, how this would work. You've got a piece of land. Who determines that it's a land of low value? The assessor?
That's determined by the Department of Revenue. As I said, they set forth every year a value, a dollar amount, and these parcels are, as you can see, this is the assessed value for fiscal '23. So just by the sheer fact that their value is well with under the value established by the DOR in 2022, it was
25,000.
No, I don't think it was that.
Oh, no, 24.
Well, no, I'm-
24,804.
Yeah, I'm fine with the number. I'm just saying, who came up with that list? Was it the assessor or the town finance department, because it came under that threshold? Who puts the list together, I guess, is my question.
The list of these parcels? I did.
Okay, you do. So now you get a list. And now you want to notify the abutters. And is the abutter rule 300 feet? Is that the?
No, this is direct abutters. This is very specific.
Oh,
It has to be direct abutters. There's a chart that is included in, like, what I've looked at other towns, their applications and requirements. It really is a physical border with the parcel. So it cannot be across the street. It cannot be like a kitty corner angle. It has to actually have a direct abutting, a contiguous line.
Makes sense. But now I want it and Mark wants it.
So there is, in the application process, there are guidelines and qualifications that the select board then would review based on the requirements and the criteria, and they would actually rank the eligibility of the two abutters if you were both. And then there's one of the other towns said, or you can subdivide the lot if you want to pay for the subdivision of the lot. If you agree to it, we'll sell it to both of you and you can subdivide the lot. So there is language, as I said, this would be in the application that the select board would approve once this step is established.
So the select board eventually decides the price
Yes.
and who gets it.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, so if we can, I guess we can do a couple of things here. Does anybody have any other questions about this bylaw? Anything? Anybody have anything for Ms. Kay? If no, Ms. Hewens, if you have concerns about 2 Mile Standish Drive, we could ask to get more information on that particular lot and then vote at this at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it did say wet. I haven't been out there to look at it, but.
That should be, I
assessors.
think we pretty much, if we have all the information we need, I don't want to bring Ms. Kay back, but
I know.
yeah, if that's the only question we have is whether that Mile Standish lot is wet or not, should be.
Yeah, and I can get that information and email it out to everybody.
All right, yeah.
And that way, it'll be only a minute at the next
Yeah,
meeting.
it should be a very,
Yeah.
very quick vote.
Okay.
Okay, so that's fine. Are there any other questions on this? All right, so we'll move this to our next meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you for
Sorry
your.
I had to wait so long. All right. Now we're back to the capital budget and approval of bonding for the library roof and painting in town hall siding and roof. That Article 4. So I know, Mr. Fennessy, you gave us some updated numbers here earlier. So
Okay, so you'll see a little different in Article 4 than what you normally see. And the reason is that, first of all, the free cash came in lower than was expected. One of the things that was brought up at the Finance Committee meetings and at the capital outlay meetings is to take certain items and bond it out, so that would relieve some of the monies that would go into these projects back into the capital plan, so that we could stay in line with the capital plan that's out there. So you'll see the first vote, which is proposed motion 1. It's on page 6. It'll talk about doing everything, doing the bonding, and then all the things in this grid that's on page 4, the first motion. And you can see the differences on what motion 1, if that passes, then you don't need motion 2, you don't need motion 3. Motion 1 fails, the next motion will be motion 2, which will not have the bonding. I don't believe. Does it, John? Does that have the bonding or is it still in it?
I don't think it has bonding in it.
No, I think it's just putting the money in from old articles and things.
Yep.
So that would reduce what we can do, what the capital plan could do, capital outlay. That would take out the repainting the tennis and basketball courts in the middle school, would take out the passenger school bus, the electric vehicle for the van for the school minivan bus. It would take out middle high school parking lot seal coating and repair, which is drastically needed. Pond Street School Athletic Field, Phase 1 design, Phase 2 build, would take that out. And then again, it wouldn't have the bonding. So the first case scenario, number 1, and I have the if you look on page 6 where it says proposed motion 1, I move to appropriate the sum of $1.685 million for library roof repair, library painting, town hall cupola, and roof repairs and replacements, and an architectural engineer for library and town roof. So that's doing the both roofs, doing the painting at the library, doing the siding here, and doing the rehab of the cupola on top. And then the second paragraph of that is to see if the town will vote to appropriate the sum for the purposes of Article 4, Scenario 1, or Motion 1, and for the purpose of related equipment and supplies for installation, furnishings, and other related services, and all costs, so forth. Transfer, and it's, I don't know what version you have, but it says stabilization, the sum of 997, 996. It's actually free cash. That was an error.
Okay. So we're not taking anything from stabilization?
No, it's all free cash. That's how much we have in free cash allotted to the capital outlay. Transfer ambulance receipts, the sum of $30,000. Transfer from the following prior town meeting articles, and this is washing out some of taking the remainder of these articles and putting it into the capital plan from different. There was money set aside for the town hall siding and so forth, and putting that all together to authorize, in addition to that, to the bond, the additional, those items that I mentioned, the school roof, the library roof, the library painting, the town hall siding, town hall roof, and the cupola.
And do you know, I don't see any votes here, do you know, did the FinCom or the Capital Outlay
They
Committee?
voted unanimously.
Both?
Yeah.
Okay. And so.
Although, I should clarify that. I'm not sure if the Finance Committee was in favor of it,
Okay.
but I don't know if they actually voted on it. If they were putting that off till we had the final numbers.
So the Capital Outlay
But
did
Capital
vote?
Outlay wrapped up, and, I give them a lot of credit. I mean, they had a lot of long nights here dealing with the Capital Outlay, because there was this desire to make sure that we stay on the plan and get the money in there so that they can get these purchases done instead of putting it down for another year. Because a lot of these things have been waiting to be done, so. But they did a lot of work on this, and
Okay.
I would suggest that we support the motion 1.
Okay.
And then you'll see in motion 2, if motion 1, it says passes, but it actually fails. I don't know which one you have version.
Yeah.
That's been corrected in the new version. Same thing, stabilization is actually free cash. And that would be that second one. And the third motion, if 1 and 2 fail, then that is just using that 997 from the free cash and a few of the other things. So that cuts it down dramatically.
Okay. Well, first things first, is there a motion to put Article 4 on the warrant?
I move we put Article 4 on the warrant.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Wait, you had
Sorry.
discussion.
I'm sorry.
Just wanted to kind of reiterate what Spencer was saying, that the ideal situation with the first version is that we get to do the library, the roof, everything gets done. We also get to hit everything that's on the wish list of the departments. But what's also nice is we're putting about $490,000 into next year's capital. So on the 10-year capital plan, 2025, if you take out some roof stuff that we don't have to do anymore, should motion 1 go through, we have about a $1.5 million borrow. So this puts almost $500,000 aside for that. So next year, should the numbers not go the way we like, and we still got $1 million, we can actually get through 24 and 25 by getting everybody what they need.
Should be talking into the mic.
Oh, Mike, I'm not gonna say. Motion 1 makes the most sense. So I'm just looking at the new revised numbers here. And I think you said you're gonna take out the first section, Article 4, the transfer stabilization sub 997. You're taking that out, right?
The what?
The first section in Article 4 where it says transfer from stabilization to 997.
So that's free
Taking that out.
cash.
Yep.
It's not stabilization. so.
Underneath it, it says transfer from the ambulance receipts 20,000.
Yep.
But that should come out, right? Because it's 30?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So then, all the numbers I see make sense to the list that we had on capital outlay. The only thing I just want you to look into, I don't recognize, is the 192 in motion 2. So it's probably right if you can just double check on that.
Yep.
That'd be good. Thank you.
Does it say it in there?
Any other questions on putting it on the warrant? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor of putting Article 4 on the
I'm
warrant?
sorry, one quick question. Sorry about that. Motion, proposed motion 3, if motion 1 fails, should that say if motion 1 and 2 fail?
1 and 2, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's already been updated, but you got the one
Okay, just want to double.
earlier from today.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to put Article 4 on the warrant. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. And while we're looking at these various things, I have one question as well, Mr. Fennessy. Item B, the Pond Street School Athletic Field, Phase 1 and Phase 2. What are they doing? What is?
I don't know, John, do you recall the presentation?
Item what?
I don't recall.
I'm just curious what they're doing over there.
When they did the,
Is it-
when they did the stadium, they
Yeah.
used that as a dumping ground for a lot of the topsoil over there. So I think this was to bring that back to a playable field.
Oh, okay.
But I had a question on that. I thought I heard at one of the meetings that there was a study or a design already done for that a couple of years back. Did you ever get clarification on that?
Well, we did from Ron. He researched it and found that there was no complete study.
Okay. All right. So I remember there was talk about that.
He looked into it.
Okay.
All right. All right. Any other questions on the capital plan here?
I have a couple.
Okay.
So free cash is lower than we expected. Was there any reason why that something that was,
Yeah, one of the problems was that we heard the ATB issues. When they file for an abatement, that money has to be taken out of free cash in case we lose. So you can't then use that for the following year until those cases are concluded. So whatever, if we win those ATB cases, then that will go into free cash for next year,
okay,
that amount. So I think that was about 250,000 in total.
okay. And then we, transferring prior to town meeting, a bunch of stuff here. Didn't we do that last year as well?
Yeah, so every year we're gonna look at what's been finished, from each department head. The list was sent out to the department heads and they looked at what they had. And anything that was left over or they weren't using came back in.
So the department heads were, somebody asked them up, because I know some of these, they had a plan, whether it's service or things down the line. So it wasn't just automatically.
No, this was all at the agreement of
Okay.
them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we wouldn't do that because we don't know what they're holding it for, if it's something, that's still out there.
Okay, because I thought we wiped everything out last year.
We wiped out a lot,
Right.
a lot of
400,000
things.
is a lot to all of a sudden come up with it.
yeah.
And then my other thing, the 447 that's going back to capital for next year, if this is voted, why wouldn't we just take that off of less that we have to bond?
Well, I think we originally had a $4 million number to bond, but we took two of the components that we're trading in from the ATM articles from last year for $815,000. We chose to pay it down. So it was a higher number. We chose to pay it down. The only reason we thought the 490 made sense going into next year was because of possibility of maybe not new growth the way we'd like, not having the funds in order to meet the capital needs per the 10-year capital schedule. Also, what we want to do is, and in prior discussions, we talked about our financial policies and how they were set way back when, and over the course of the past couple of years, they changed. And this gives us like a 1 to 2 year window to get capital done and go back to our financial policies without having any kind of significant hit to departments.
Okay. And my last question, last year when I was on Capitol LA, we voted for the HVAC for library and the town hall siding, correct? That's what we short-term borrowed on?
No, we short-term borrowed on the HVAC, not on the, we put money in for the siding.
Okay, so
So when we bond that this year, then that money is freed up as part of this calculation. Goes back into the capital plan.
So the money that last year, we agreed to, short-term borrow, and I think what, 900, half of it we did last year?
Yeah.
So the HVAC project I know is started, correct,
Yep.
so nothing was done on the town hall siding?
No,
Okay.
no. You see it?
Well, that's what I mean. I mean,
No,
the
I
money
know,
was put
yeah.
aside, but so nothing,
Because it was a two-part thing. We would fund it additionally this year.
okay.
But we don't, so if we take that out, what was put in already, it's been put back into the capital to buy these.
So instead of doing what was decided last year, we just want to bond that with other projects as well?
Since we're doing a bond, putting it all together, it's not gonna, it'll, obviously it's more money, but
Add to debt service, so it will affect capital, funds for capital down the road. But it shouldn't have a huge impact.
And it also gets everything.
but over a
Yeah,
period of,
that's it.
10 or 15 years.
And just going through that old annual town meeting article list, there's going to be a lot of changes going forward. We had some that were almost like revolving counts. That's
Yes.
going to go away. We're not going to bundle asks like the school. I know the townwide technology, which includes school and town, 273. We're breaking that out by component so that at the end of the year we can turn around and say, is that done? Is that done? Is that done? And we've got commitments from everyone to not have open. If you ask for this money and town meeting is gracious enough to give you that money, you have to start your project. It can't be sitting there, no activity for a year. Oh, sorry. Last thing was, there's one more annual town meeting article that we need to look at next year, and that is, back in 2017, there was a reserve put in place for health insurance. That's about $250,000.
Yep.
That is still sitting out there. We need some input from, everybody that's involved in the health insurance component to find out, really what is that for? Do we need it? And can we start paring it down?
So that, if we're talking about the same one, that money is set aside for employees to recover monies when they change insurances for, I don't know, mitigation, I guess is a good word, that they can get any co-pays and other costs reimbursed for anything that they spend that resulted from this change. We put in money to that. We pay an administrator $20,000 a year to administrate that program because it's very, very time consuming. But so that is something I want to look at of how we can manage to remove that from holding it, especially that amount of money, because we'll never run out because it's just there's not that many that put in. Sometimes it's a big bill, a $300 bill or something for a hospital stay or something, but generally it's those $10, $20 copays, and we don't even make a dent in that.
I thought that had a time period. I thought there was a time period where that program ended.
I don't believe so,
Okay.
but that's on our list, John. Sue and I are working on that.
So if a new employee came in and their health benefits, would that be affected?
I don't believe so. I think the time period was for employees who were.
Yeah, it had to.
Yeah, no.
Memory serves me correctly. It had to do with a health insurance change.
Yes.
Here in town hall for employees that were already on health insurance to help mitigate some of the
Yeah.
differences that might arise from the change in health plans.
And there was a lot of funding put in those early years because you didn't know how much you'd be spending out. But
I thought there was a sunset on that, but I guess I'm
No.
wrong. Okay.
I guess when the last employee leaves,
Well, there you go.
but dies. That's,
So in a way, I'm right.
there is. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on the capital plan?
One other quick question. So motion 1 and motion 2. Motion 1 is we bond. Motion 2 is we don't bond, correct?
Correct. But we still use the funding from those old articles.
Okay. So basically it's $200,000 difference whether we bond or not bond.
No, that number's wrong on the bottom. Yeah, you have the
You gotta
old.
look at your new sheet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It
sorry.
goes from 4,300,000
Well,
to
yeah.
1,500,000.
because of bonding the heavy hitters.
Okay.
Are you good? Yep. Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Hoffman, does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
All right. Is there a motion to recommend either motion 1, motion 2, or motion 3?
I move that we recommend motion 1.
Second.
Right, I have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of recommending motion 1? Aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No.
Okay, so is that a 3-2? Correct? Okay. All right. And let's see. Finally, we have the solar pilot agreements, and we're going to postpone a vote on that until our next meeting, so people have time to read those solar pilot agreements. So I don't think we missed anything.
Bylaw change. Number 24.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
24, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, the capital outlaw bylaw change. Article 24, okay, thank you, Ms. Weston. So, let me get all the way down to this. And let's see, do you know what page this is on?
Page 21.
I went right by it, that's why. All right, Article 24, Capital Outlaw Bylaw Change. To see if the town will vote to amend Section 4.7 of the town's general bylaws related to the Capital Outlay Committee as shown below, with deletions shown in strike-through and additions in bold, or take any other action related thereto. So, Mr. Clotter, do you want to speak to this a little bit?
Sure. What we looked at was kind of some ambiguity on the old capital outlay article. You know, when we created this capital fund, you know, the whole purpose of it was to use it for 100% capital items, and this started to be an interpretation of really what is capital. Like we had sometimes new hire equipment in there when that's really doesn't qualify as a capital item. It needs to have, you know, a significant value, generally a life of more than 1 year. So we just tried to make a list of what really are the items that should fit into the request list for capital outlay. In addition to that, we did increase the number from 10,000 to 20,000, only really to get those big items that we need to get out of the operating budgets and to fund through a capital component. So it really doesn't change a lot other than the amount, and tries to clarify what capital can be used for.
Right. Well, all right, is there a motion to put Article 24 on the warrant?
I move we put Article 24 on the warrant.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. All right, discussion on Article 24? Anybody have any questions?
So I just had one quick question.
Sure.
This past year, when that issue was not having 2 select board members on this capital outlay, did that get changed, or trying to see where it?
I don't think we did. We didn't change that.
Looks the same. It's right
on
after
Page 21.
Yeah, right after toward the bottom, right after
At
the
the
bolded.
bottom. Only, it says one member shall be elected by the select board as its representative. Such person may be from its own membership. Same for school committee, same for finance committee. And then 2 members shall be selected by the town administrator.
So there was something in it that talked about compensated.
Well, I think if I recall, I think the conflict was whether the 2 members selected by the town administrator, whether one of them could be a member of the Board of Selectmen.
I thought it said something about compensated. Because
You're right. You're right. I do recall that.
was that the select board one? No, it was this, I thought.
You're right. There was something in there about compensation.
You're right, Bob. Maybe it was the select board
I think it was
bylaw that you can't be in any other compensated.
Yeah,
Maybe it was.
That's what it was.
yeah, I think it was.
Okay, I'm sorry. I got it mixed up.
All right. Questions on the, on Article 24? Is there a motion to recommend Article 24?
Make a motion to recommend Article 24.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Town Administrator update. Mr. Fennessy.
Okay. Sit back. It's long. Okay, the first thing I want to mention is the North Carver Water District. A quick update. Last week, we were informed that we can expect the delivery of the parts for the 3-inch well pump in mid-April, after which the company is going to contact the well company for repair. And once that's done, Small Water Systems will start the process of restoring the water flow through the system. This will include running and cycling the plant and testing and taking samples that will be provided to the DEP. And if all goes well, North Carver Water District anticipates that the treatment plant will be fully functional in May. I was also advised that part of the North Carver Water District Commissioner's process is to make sure that the customers who are on the system will be made aware that we're switching over prior to the North Carver Water District water going through and ending the flow from Middleborough. They'll be flushing and purging the system of Middleborough water by infusing Carver water prior to turning it over. More information will be available by the commissioners in the coming weeks, including a list of contacts for the residents. And in that light, one of the things Dave and I talked about too was having John Ball, who's here, be kind of a contact person for the town on this side. So if somebody's having trouble getting in touch with Small Water Systems or they don't know who to call, he'll be the one handling those calls and filtering it through, so to speak. No pun. No.
And I think the one other thing we have to make sure of with that I know we've discussed in here before is communication the other way. If we know that the North Carver Water System is going to be shut down from, 2 to 4 a.m. for maintenance, we have to ensure that somebody in town hall is reaching out to those folks as early as possible to let them know that that's going to happen.
Yeah. Yep. Carver Community Electricity Aggregation Program is our electric supply program. Latest electrical information disclosure for the program has been prepared and is on the company's website, masscea.com/Carver, but you don't have to go there because it's also on our website. If you go on our website and go to, I believe it's Community Electricity tab, and you can click on that and you can read it. Just for an idea of what the aggregate paying, it's $10.47 per kilowatt hour. And what does Eversource cost? It's $15.73.5. So it's a big difference to get onto the aggregate. So hope people, if they want to get on, if they haven't been on, they should look into that. I want to mention a couple of grants that we received. The town received a safety grant of $5,950 from the Department of Industrial Accidents for operation and maintenance training programs in toxicology awareness and injury prevention, and that's mixing chemicals. Like if they're cleaning, you may remember a few times that somebody died there was I think in a restaurant in Burlington by putting ammonia down with something else, and they died. And I understand too, somebody from Plymouth died that way. So this will train them on what they can and can't use. Also in how to keep from being injured in certain ways. Also, it had ergonomic and stress programs for the staff, which have already been concluded. Many staff members took part in those, and it was very useful. And I want to thank Elaine Weston for pursuing that grant money and keeping our people safe. Also, Serpent announced that it's pleased to award $10,000 to Carver to begin work on the town's Housing Protection Plan, the HPP. This will allow Serpent to work with the town staff to advance the project over the next 24 months at no cost to the town. On this, I want to acknowledge town planner Tom Bott for the work he did in pursuing this funding. So good job to these two great employees. I was going to mention the capital outlay concluded, but we already talked about that. The ARPA, after the board's decisions at the meeting where different ARPA projects were funded, Sue Moker and I met with the Plymouth County Commissioners to go over not only the proper funding place, but to begin the applications with the county. So a lot of those have to be approved, pre-approved by the county once they're put in. So that's moving forward. And last but not least, after a search to find a permanent full-time building commissioner without any results over the past 4 months, we opted to bring in Rod Palmer as an interim building commissioner last December. And having seen his work and received very positive comments from staff and from residents, I encouraged Mr. Palmer to apply for the permanent position, which he did. After interviews with the assistant town administrator and human resources coordinator Lane and myself, Mr. Palmer was offered the position and he accepted. For background purposes, he served 8 years as Raynham's building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer, and accessibility coordinator. As North Attleboro's building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer, and accessibility coordinator for another 8 years. He's on the 8-year plan. And as Falmouth building commissioner, zoning enforcement officer, and floodplain manager for 5 years, after which time he initiated an early retirement in 2021 during the COVID period. And he has worked part-time for the town of Wareham since then as their building commissioner while they were searching for a full-time person. He came in as an interim 19-hour-week commissioner. I found his work to be impeccable. His personality and demeanor, a great fit for the town, and especially in the building and planning departments. During that time, he made a good case that he felt that the position can be accomplished in a part-time position under 35 hours, and ultimately we agreed upon an initial 22 to 24 hours per week, and we're going to see how that goes. I asked him today for his thoughts of coming aboard with us, because this is all just this past week, and he said, and I quote, "The working environment here with a friendly atmosphere and level of professionalism surpasses all of my prior municipal employment experience. I'm very happy to be here working for the town of Carver." The bonus, not that we need a bonus, is that he and his family have lived in Carver for more than 10 years. And he has 2 children that attended the Carver schools and loves the town. So next time you're in town hall, stop down and say hi to him. Get to know him. He's a great guy, great personality, and knows his stuff, which is all pluses. So,
Absolutely.
so
Good news.
that's it.
Good news, thank you.
Great. Yeah.
All right. Minutes, licenses, topics not reasonably anticipated by the chair 48 hours in advance of the meeting. We have the minutes of February 28th, 2023. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to accept the minutes of February 28th.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. The minutes of March 7th, 2023.
Motion to approve the minutes of March 7, 2023.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we have a second. One small change on those minutes just a typo. On the very first page under citizens participation, where we, Bob Belbin, the very first line, at the very last, he said that. It should say that. It says TGAT. So just a small correction there. That's all.
I have one amendment,
Okay.
just on page 5, above the chapter 61A request. This is just to clarify one of my its, because that sentence has, Bogart stated it, there's a bunch of its. So I just wanted to change it to Bogart stated, it has been mentioned in the past that projects that know they would require land to come out of 61A come to the select board before getting permitted by other boards. So it just specifies what that second it is.
You say that again? Just so we
Yep.
get it.
Bogart stated it has been mentioned in the past that projects that know they would require land to come out of 61A come to the select board first before getting permitted by other boards. Just clarifies the it. That it's not just this one project we were talking about, but that it's any project.
Okay,
That's it.
all right. Is there a motion with those corrections?
Make a motion as amended?
And is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is,
I wasn't here that night, so.
it is 4-0-1. Thank you. Okay, the executive session minutes of February 21st, 23 for approval and release.
Motion to approve executive session minutes for February 21st, 2023.
And release.
Yeah, for approval
re-
and release.
For approval and release.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I think I wasn't there for that. Pretty sure.
I think you're correct.
So I'd have to,
Okay. Okay, 4-0-1.
right.
Thank you. Select board announcements. Mr. Cotter?
I do not have any.
Ms. Bowler?
Me neither.
Mr. Hoffman?
I have two, actually. One, I'd like to remind everybody that Shane Gives Thanks fundraiser on April 15th, bingo at the high school. So I hope everybody can attend. There'll be a children's candy bingo starting at, I believe, 3:30. And then the regular bingo starts at 5. So hope everyone attends. And I just want to thank the board publicly for their messages and thoughts during my lost my mother recently, and also everyone else that reached out to me. So my family and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Ms. Ewens?
I was just going to echo Jim's comments about Shane Give Thanks Food Pantry. No, that's fine.
All right. And I will echo those comments as well, and I have absolutely nothing else. So with that, let's see. Our next scheduled meeting is April 4th, but I believe we're probably going to schedule a meeting before that. We'll update our schedule when we have a date and a time set for that. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good week.